So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. The good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the Premier membership.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.findlayvolvo.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. Today's show is very special for me because I have a friend here that I've had for almost 25 years, and it was happenstance that we met. She was at the pool at the Mandalay Bay, and we didn't have any business at the salon that I worked at the Mandalay Bay. And we happened to be standing outside. And what we did, and I would encourage every single person, if you're in the professional beauty industry or you're just opening a business, if you don't have enough business, be willing to stand outside and talk to people. Shake their hands and offer them your service, your product, whatever it is, without a bait and switch. And we weren't bait and switching. We were just offering women that came out of the pool complimentary blow dries, but we weren't trying to upsell them on anything. We just wanted to take care of them. Dana walked by, and when she walked by, we said, hey, this would be a great representation because she's a very beautiful woman if you see her right now. And I just said, we'd love to give you a complimentary blow dry. And, there was a little bit of hesitancy at first, and then she came in. And it was amazing because we were able to connect. And little did I know that 25 years later, we would be talking about her children, who were like 4 when I met her, and talking about her grandchildren, and talking about the amazing career that she's been able to have, not only through entrepreneurship, but also through the writing side, being a contributor for Chicken Soup for the Soul, being an editor. I think the greatest venture is like surrendering to the King, which we're going to talk about. And being able to see the blank check that's been written to her because she got in line with exactly what she was purposed to do. And it's my honor, my pleasure, and honestly, I've been looking forward to this day, and to be able to spend time with her. So please welcome to the show, Miss Dana Martin.
Hey, Kelly. It's so good to be here. So good.
Well, let's talk about, you said you got a blank check from the King. And a lot of people are like, do you live in Europe? Right? Do you live in Europe? Is that what it is? Did we get a blank check from the King? Help us with this, because I think that, this is a step out. This is a step out in faith. We're going to, and let me help, because my wife wanted me to do these kind of things. My wife wanted to let you all know what you're going to be getting on this episode. So what you're going to be getting is friendship for 25 years, and understanding and knowing the impact of that. You're also going to get how to write a book, how to edit a book, how to be able to be a contributor to a New York Times bestseller. You're also going to get entrepreneurship. And I think huge part is how to surrender to the King. So my wife wants me to give the table of contents before we start off, and we want to thank all the sponsors too. But Dana, how can we surrender to the King?
Well, I know for me, it came out of necessity because in October of 2000, I want to say now 21, it was October of 2021, I lost my mom. And as you know, you've had these losses too. I lost my best friend, and it was sudden. I was not ready. She was healthy. I wasn't ready to lose her. And but thankfully I had my faith, and it got me through, and it got my family through. But after we got through her service, and it was probably January of 2022, I was on a walk, and my walks became a place for me to, endorphins, obviously makes you feel better, but I had to go on my walks because I felt like that's where I could connect to God. And on my walk one day, I was just talking to him. I was speed walking. I was talking to him, and I said, I've lost my purpose. I mean, my mom wasn't my purpose, but I've lost my best friend. I feel so dry. I feel spiritually dry. And so I said to God, you know what? You use me. You use me. I give myself to you. And now in the past, I've said, hey, God, use me. And I felt like he's used me with a neighbor or friend that needed something. But this time it was different. I gave him a blank check. I said, I'm done leading my life entirely. I want you to do it. I want to see what you have for me entirely. So I just gave him my life that day. I'd been a believer a long time. I'd been working for him for a long time. I prayed a lot. I did things. But I had just recently gone back to church because I felt connected to my mom there. And so this day it was different. I literally laid my life before him and said, you do what you want with it. And wow, that changed everything.
So help us with this, because there's people listening and they're like, you talk to God. This is what I know. If you're watching me on YouTube, you just saw me. And if you're watching on YouTube, 84% of you don't subscribe. So subscribe. It's the right thing to do. Your mom would be proud of you. But a lot of people that are watching me on YouTube, and Wayne Freeman, hopefully you are, you saw me roll my eyes when I said there's a lot of people that be like, you talk to God. Like, help us with this talking to God thing. I mean, Are you talking out loud? Are you walking fast and talking out loud? Because, I mean, and are there people around? Are they looking at this amazing woman and being like, she kind of crazy while she's speed walking, she's talking to herself? Take us through this.
So no, it's not out loud. It's inside, right? It's your inside voice. We talk to ourselves all the time anyway. It's the same voice that you say. It's the same voice you use when you say, man, that was stupid, but you say it in your head. That's that same voice you're talking, but you're talking to the God of the universe who lives and breathes inside of you. And so if you've accepted Christ, the Holy Spirit lives in you, and you can speak to him anytime you want. He reads your thoughts. He already knows what you're thinking anyway, but he loves hearing from us. And so you just talk to him, and you talk to him in the same way I'm talking to you right now. He doesn't need the these and the thous and all of that. He just wants to have communion with us. He wants to have conversation with us, and he wants to answer us, and he wants to give us answers to our prayers. And anything you ask, it says in the Bible, I'll say yes, as long as it's for the kingdom. So when you put yourself in service to the king, he knows that's for the kingdom. So he's going to say yes. Thank you, Dana. I have been waiting. Wow. Thank you for your sacrifice of wanting to work for me. And so now that's what I tell people when they say, hey, what do you do for a living? I'm like, well, I have a boss. I'm not the boss of me anymore. I have a boss, and he's amazing. He's the best boss in the whole world. And honestly, from the day that I did that, my life has been amazing. It's not that I don't have troubles anymore. Everybody has troubles, whether you believe or not. Whether you believe in God or not, you're going to have troubles in this world. The difference, though, is that I have the creator of the universe who helps me through my troubles, who guides me. I have a voice inside of me that says, go this way or that way. I have a voice inside me that says, have grace with that person. They've had a bad day. Give them love. They just need love. I have a voice inside me that says, calm down, slow down, let me handle it. It's almost like a cheat sheet. I have a cheat sheet living inside me that I can just go to at any time, and he can give me the answers.
Well, Dana, I want to go back to a thing that you just said. So you said that, everything started working out. Like right when you gave the blank check to God, you talked to him in your head, in the same Dana that you're talking to right now. And then you gave him the blank check, and things started to go amazing. And then you gave the caveat, because I was like, yes, okay, cool. And all the listeners too were like, yes, okay, if I give it, then everything will be cool. My rent will be paid, my house payment, all the stuff. And then you gave the caveat that said, like, it doesn't mean that your circumstances are going to change. It means that your mindset or your heart set about those circumstances will change. Can you explain that part? Because I don't know if I ever told you this story, but one time I was up late, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. I was in a hotel, and I was watching an infomercial, and I get sold on infomercials late. And this is a bad thing. This is why my wife won't let me watch them anymore. But I was watching this video and it said you could have these abs in only 6 minutes a day if you just watch these videos. And I was like, whoa, yes, I want abs. I've never had them. And then I watched this thing for 2.5 hours and I was in. I was going to buy the DVDs. I was in. I was going to watch them 6 minutes a day. And then at the end, he said, the only way that this thing won't work is if you actually don't do the exercises. And I was like, man, that sucks. Like you said, just watch the videos. So you got me on that because you said, like, all I have to do is turn it over to God. And I was like, yes. And then you said, but your circumstances won't change, but your mindset will. And I was like, damn it, Dana, like, I want to shake you on that one. So help us with this part of it.
Okay. So there's a couple of things there. I'll save the scary one for a second. So like I said before, everybody has trouble, right? It doesn't mean... So literally, whether I believe in God or not, I'm going to have trouble in my life. If you have listeners right now who say, absolutely, I'm on the fence, I don't understand God, I don't believe in him, or maybe just the opposite. They have a lot of church hurt. They have a lot of religion hurt, which is a lot of people. There's a lot of people with that. And so they're hesitant. They are like, what God is she talking about? I'm talking about the God who loves you no matter what. Jesus, when he came, he didn't come to start a religion. He came to start a relationship. It was mankind went on and I won't use the word I normally use, but
you can use any words you want. We'll hold them against you in court, but you can use any words you want, Dana.
They messed up and egos got involved, and, they went, and there's all these different, rules and regulations, and you have to do this, and your good works get you to heaven, and you have to follow these rules to get you to heaven. And Jesus is up there going, no, that is not true. Have a relationship with me. Just believe in me. Have a relationship with me, and I will walk alongside you. You'll still have problems the same way your atheist neighbor does, but the difference is I'm going to be walking alongside you, and I'm going to make sure that the trouble you go through serves a purpose. It's not just going to be trouble in your life. It isn't just going to be trouble for trouble's sake. That I promise you that I am going to use every single trouble that the enemy brings you. It means for your harm, I'm going to use for good. Now, the second part of that I said was a little bit scary is that when you do put yourself in service to the King, you put a huge target on your back. From that point forward, you're going to have a target on your back because the enemy does not want you saved. He does not want God walking beside you. He doesn't want you to have hope. He doesn't want you to have anything good in life. So he's going to start bugging you. He's going to start trying to throw things at you that you've never seen before. You're going to start having arguments with your kids, arguments with your spouses. Your job might not be going well. He's going to throw arrows. He's going to shoot arrows at you because he doesn't want you to get to that place with God where I am now, where everybody could be just in having an intimate relationship with the King. But God promises he will protect you from those arrows. He will make sure no matter what arrows hit you, he will still use those for your benefit somehow, which is different from people who are walking alone without protection.
So Dana, help me with this, because a lot of times people don't realize that the talents and the gifts that he's given you, he's going to be able to work for his good anyway, right? And so your talent in writing and editing, you're now able to use that in service for your ultimate purpose. Can you talk about the link between those? Because I think a lot of times people think, well, if for me to follow God, I just literally have to put a robe on, put some sandals on, be broke for the rest of my life. And I can't do anything at all. I've just got to be like David Carradine and on Kung Fu and walk around and get in adventures. But you have seemed to, utilize your gift that God gave you anyway, and now you're just utilizing it to honor who he is.
You bring up a good point, but you're talking about two entirely different things. So God gives everybody gifts and he gives everybody talents. Right? And so my talent is that I can write. I can edit, I can use words. I love the English language. That's a talent. My gifts are leadership, encouragement, and what is my other one? Leadership, encouragement, and
I would say joy and laughter. Like I have laughed so much this morning, even in the small amount of time that we've been on, and you bring so much joy and fire into every environment.
I love it. That's him. That's all him, because he lives inside me, and And that makes me so happy that I can positively reflect him like that, because my like I said, my talent, he gave me the talent of writing. Now I can choose to use that talent however I like. I can use it in the world, which is fine, and I spent many years doing that. I spent many years running, we had talked about this earlier, running haunted attractions. I have spent many years as an entrepreneur. I was an editor of a magazine. So I used those talents because, believe it or not, the haunted house industry, I was a writer. I had to write the backstories for all of the horror scenes. And I did that for money for other haunted houses that also wanted that. And so, yes, I was using the talent God gave me. Now, was I using it for the kingdom? I was not. I was not. Now, my gifts, my spiritual gifts, everybody is endowed with spiritual gifts the minute that they're saved. And leadership, faith, and encouragement are mine. And so now I am using those in conjunction with my talents in order to serve him and to serve people and to love on people and to encourage them and tell them how great they are and to give them hope and to walk alongside of them when they need help in just finding purpose in their lives. I'm just like the air traffic controller guy, going up.
So take me through it, because you and I have been through quite a journey, because 25 years ago is when we met. And talk to me about 25-year, this was 1999. So I think you were 5-6 years old. And I think I was 8 at the time. But we met at that time, and, let's talk about that journey, right? Because a lot of people will hear you talk now and say, oh, wow, I would love to be able to get to that point where I can just give God a blank check. But did you give him a blank check right away? Or were you like, I'll give you a couple pennies, and then I'm going to give you a dime, and then I'm going to give you $1, and then I'm going to take back the $1, and then I'm going to give you another dime, and then I'm going to start over. So walk us through that. Let's go back to that 1999 Dana, who walks in the Mandalay Bay with that nice big perm. You remember the big perm too. Big perm.
Oh, I'm an 80s girl. You know it. I was still rocking it a decade after it was out of style.
Represent Bakersfield, baby. Bakersfield in the house.
Yeah,
So take me to that Dana in 1999, because that was, am I correct on this? This wasn't a blank check Dana at that time.
No. In 1999, I had only been quote unquote saved for 5 years. So I always believed in God, but I wasn't raised in church. I was raised in a household that believed in God, but they were very irreverent with God. I mean, I grew up with my mom, dad, and grandma taking the Lord's name in vain. That was their favorite curse word, was JC, and all of that. They would just say GD, all of them, right? And so I always tell the funny story to my groups about how when I became 18, or who knows, it could have been 16, I had grown up hearing them take the Lord's name in vain, and I thought that was a cuss word. That's the cuss word you used. And it's funny because even as a young girl, I tried it one time. And I didn't like it. It felt like wrong in my mouth, which I thought was funny because I had grown up with it. So that was like the first indication that God was moving in me from a very young age. So anyway, somebody approached me one day and said, well, what are your beliefs? And I said, well, it was very basic. I believe that Jesus is God's son. And she said, well, have you ever prayed the salvation prayer? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so she just prayed it with me, and then that was it. So it took years though. Yeah, right. You're saved. You believe in Jesus, you become part of the family, but he's a gentleman. He's not going to just reach in and interfere in your life. The thing about God is that he values our free will. He's the God of the universe, and yet he puts our free will above any will of his. He wants us to be in his family. He wants to be there. He wants to guide us. He wants to do all these things, but he allows us to have free will. So we actually have to go to him and start saying, hey, I pray to you. I want to know you better. I want to get to know you. And nothing makes him happier. But the day that you met, I was busy raising kids. I was in a young marriage, and it's, I got married at 19, and I didn't know my husband really that well at all when I married him. We'd only known each other a few months. And so it would take me years to really, years of like what we were talking about earlier, just going through troubles and going to God when I had trouble, but then leaving God again when the trouble was over. I heard it said once that God is so desperate for a relationship with us that if the only time we come to him is in desperate circumstances, he will keep us in desperate circumstances. So if that's the only time you go to talk to him, he's going to make sure to keep you in desperate circumstances because it's that important to him to have communication with you.
So let's talk about young Dana, and Rob is your husband, right?
Yes.
And so you said you got married at 19 years old,
Mm-hmm.
but you've been married for 34 years.
Yes.
So you're 21 right now. So, but let's talk about this young marriage part, because I mean, you said you only knew Rob for a couple of months. Now, for those of you out there listening, our demographic is so crazy because from Dana, from 17 to 60, we are equal parts. Everyone told me we couldn't do this, but we are equal parts. They all said you have to choose a niche. It's got to be guys at 34. You got to be women at 22. No, we got from 17 to 60. We are almost 25, 25, 25, 25. Let's talk to the young kids. First of all, kids, I'm going to tell you that what Dana's not going to tell you, don't get married at 19. Okay. So I'm going to tell you that one, but you did, and you have a phenomenal marriage. You have phenomenal kids. You have an incredible family, but it takes work. Let's talk about the work that it takes to be married for 34 years. And let's not breeze over this stuff as far as give us like a 30,000 foot view. Let's talk about the specifics and what things do we need to do to be able to have a healthy marriage?
Well, I'll just tell you the dirt. I'll just tell you the story. 30-year-old Dana, when you met her, I think I still had stars in my eyes. I was still young girls. We are raised listening and watching fairy tales. And when a young girl gets married, she never gets married with the idea of divorce one day. She gets married with the idea that it's going to last forever. And I think that men maybe aren't the same. Not that Rob ever wanted a divorce, but what happened to us is, and this is a cautionary tale, God saved my marriage. I tried to leave Rob. I tried to leave him in approximately 2012. And I had been unhappy for years. I had been especially unhappy since my 40s. And when I turned 40, I just decided that I wasn't going to be unhappy anymore. And nothing Rob could do was ever right. Our marriage wasn't right. We got married too young. I had myself convinced that I chose Rob, that God didn't choose him. We talked about my faith earlier. My faith had started to grow in increments where I started listening to podcasts. I still didn't go to church, but I started getting curious and I wanted to get to know God better. The danger in that was that I was becoming self-righteous too. Rob wasn't, I deserved a godly man. I deserved a man who wanted to lead me. I deserved, there was all these things. And he was angry, and he had a lot of anger issues in a lot of different things. And so in a nutshell, we didn't have a good marriage. And so we went through years like that. We made it through. We were raising kids, but in the back of my mind, I thought, as soon as these kids are raised, as soon as they're old enough, then I'm going to get out. And so, like I said, I had been praying to God. I had been trying to learn about him, and I knew enough that I didn't want to make a mistake. And so one day after a particularly rough fight, Rob and I had gotten into fights a lot. We had a yelling, screaming marriage. So the Dana you see now and the marriage you see now wasn't how it was for years. And I think a lot of your listeners or viewers are going to be able to relate to this, because we weren't always happy. We solved problems by yelling at each other so loud that our kids have that core memory now of their parents screaming at each other. And so after one particularly bad fight in, I want to say 2012 or 13, I decided I'm done. And I went to my prayer spot, which at that time was on a hard bathroom floor. And I got on my knees and I had my elbows on the bathtub. And I said to God, please, I just want to leave him. But I don't want to do it without your permission. Give me a sign. Give me a sign and tell me, how can I leave him? Show me that it's okay with you that I leave him. And I stayed in prayer and I heard him say, and it's an impression, it's not an audible voice. I heard him say these words to me: you have to tell him. And I knew exactly what he meant, but I didn't want to tell him. And I told God, I argued back. I argued. My mom would laugh at this because I was an arguer. I argued with the Lord of the universe. I said, no, I don't want to tell him. He should just know that on his own. And God said back to me, and again, an impression, and he said, he doesn't know, you have to tell him. And so I thought, okay, I'll go tell him, I'll make God happy, and then I'll be able to leave Rob. So I walked into where Rob was sitting, and I said to him, all feisty, if you want this marriage to work, you have to be my Christian leader. And of course, I was not saying it nicely. And so it caused another fight. Are you saying I don't believe in God? Rawr! And so it was this giant argument again. And I went, all right, there it is. And so I decided that I did what God asked me to do. But I waited. A couple weeks later, we had another huge fight. I went back on my knees at that bathtub, elbows on the hard bathtub, praying, and I'm saying, God, please just let me leave him. You see what I have to deal with here. This is not right. I deserve a man of God. I deserve somebody who will pray over me. And I swear to you, deep inside, I heard him say, you know what you have to do. And I literally threw my hands up to God and I said, you saw me. I already said it. I already told him. You saw his reaction. And I stayed in prayer and I think it was feisty. Like I was like, And he goes, say it one more time. Say it one more time and you're off the hook. I literally heard that in here. Say it one more time and you're off the hook. And I opened my eyes and I went, I can do anything one more time. So I walked in there and I thought, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to make sure that God is proud of me and how I deliver it this time so that it's authentic. I went in and with so much humility, he was not looking at me because we had just been in a fight. He was looking straight ahead. So I was talking to the side of his face. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not saying you don't believe in God. I know you believe in God. But what I'm saying to you is what I need for a happy marriage, what would make me happy, what would make us happy together is if you would lead us. I need you to be my leader. Like I was submitting myself to him in a way that to say, I need you to lead me. Because up until that point, I had been the one talking to the kids about God. I had been the one, if we did go to church, asking him to go to church. I had been the one doing all of that, praying over the meals, whatever I would be doing that. And all of a sudden, he starts looking sideways at me. And he goes, well, this guy at work has been trying to get me to go to a men's Bible study on Friday mornings. He goes, I'll start going. And I went like, oh, okay, that's awesome. And it was like, well, I didn't have to get the answer I wanted because I wanted permission to leave him. I didn't get that answer. But what I got was God's answer. And I can tell you the rest of the story of what happened from there, but that is why we are where we are today.
Well, tell us the rest of the story. I mean, tell it that this is incredible. And what I want you to expand on is the one thing that I heard there is you said that you asked God for something. Right? You said, I want your best. And he gave you his best, but it wasn't what you actually wanted. It was what he knew was best for you. Can you expand on that part? Because this is where I get, I remember asking my pop, I was like, Pop, or no, he asked me, he's like, son, he calls me boy. He said, boy, do you want God's best? This is my dad's voice. Boy, you want God's best or you want your best? And I was like, of course, Dad. Of course, Pop, I want God's best. And he was like, well, what if God's best is a broken down car with no wheels on it. And I was like, that's simple. I just want my best in that situation. And he's like, no, you already chose. And so help us with that scenario, because this is where, again, this is that caveat, Dana, and you keep killing me with these caveats. This is that caveat that I'm like, yes, he's going to give me exactly what I want. He's going to give me a sign. And then you were like, but it probably won't be what you want.
It's not what you want, right? With your human understanding. Like, that was my flesh that wanted to leave Rob. I felt like I could do better. I didn't care what God wanted. I felt like I must have cared, because I didn't want to get it wrong, because I prayed, hey, I don't want to screw this up. But I told him, by the way, though, I want to leave Rob. I really do. So help me, because I know, God, that you must want me to leave Rob. This is literally conversation with him, because you see how he treats me, because you see that we don't get along. You see this awful marriage. You see that we're not good examples for our children, because I wasn't either. We brought out the worst in each other. And so I wanted what I wanted. I had it in my mind that I deserved somebody else that was a different man of God, that was a man of God. I deserved that, right? Because again, go back to the self-righteousness, because I felt like I was already perfect. No, that's true. I knew I wasn't perfect, but I thought at least I was 10 steps ahead of Rob, right? So I asked for his permission, mainly because I just didn't want to screw up. And he gave it to me. He gave me his decision, which I accepted, because even though I didn't want Rob at the time, I had to obey, at least because God had answered. I heard his voice. He answered, right? See, we oftentimes want what we want because we don't see the full picture. We don't see 10 years ahead. We don't see, look at it. It was 10, 11 years ago when all of this happened. I couldn't see in 2012 that in 2022, I would have a man that covers me in prayer, that will walk in and put his giant arms around me and start praying over me right on the spot if he feels like I need it. I have a man who just all of a sudden will walk in my bedroom and say, let's pray, and guides our children, is a man of God. I didn't know that 10 years ago. God knew it, and he rewarded my obedience because I gave him permission to give me his best. My flesh, my worldly Dana, I would have picked somebody else, and God would have been like, well, I gave you free will. I do value your free will, but I understood that, and I don't want to use my free will. I want his will for my life. God, your will be done, because my will sucks. I could tell that I would have gone down a wrong path. So God, your will be done, you know?
So Dana, how do you forgive though? This is the part, like, you know, because there's a lot of people that are in relationships like that right now. Right. And they're saying like, I just want out, because being out is the answer. Right. And I'm not saying like if you're in an abusive situation, like super abusive, physically abusive, whatever it is, but how do you go back in then and not being human? I mean, you're touched by God, but I'm petty at times. And so a lot of times, and my wife knows this, that I will bring back up something. I'll be like, well, yeah, you just prayed for me, but you know what? Last, a couple years ago, you used to be acting like this. Like, how do you let that go? You know what I mean? And move forward.
Yeah. Well, forgiveness is an entity all entirely of itself. First of all, the forgiveness, when you forgive somebody, because I just had to forgive somebody in December who doesn't even know that she's been forgiven. And it had been weighing on me, and God really showed me that this was an anchor in my life that was keeping me from his best, even though, look at me, it was just December. It was just this past December. And that person doesn't know, because I forgave her. Forgiveness is a funny thing. It's for yourself. If everybody knew how great the forgiveness was, it doesn't excuse what the person did. It just releases you. What God has done for me, I can only speak for myself. When I've had to forgive somebody, he has shown me this person maybe wasn't raised like you. She didn't have the mom you did. She didn't have the benefit of the childhood you did. She's just doing the best she can. So that's one way he shows me how to forgive somebody. The other way is he sort of highlights, he's like, really, Dana? After everything I've forgiven you for,
Ooh.
you can't forgive this person for that? Think about everything I've forgiven you for. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, God, you're right. Wow, how dare me? How dare I?
Does he always win, or have you ever tried to negotiate with God and he was like, Dana, you got a point?
No, the one time I tried to argue with him is when he said one more time and you're off the hook. So he wins. He gets his will. He gets his will. Now he'll allow us to use our free will and take it upon ourselves. But then you're living outside of his will at that point. When you're doing it in your own steam, he's given you sails on a sailboat. And when you reach under the water and you're like, no, I don't like where those sails are going. And you try to use your hand and you're using your hands to get the boat in the direction you want. There's no guarantees anymore that he's going to give you his best because you're trying to manipulate the situation for your own good.
So we're going to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, I want to discuss God's sense of humor. Because this was a big thing with my mom, and I didn't realize it at first. Because I remember, coming in contact, getting to know God at first, and I was like, "Man, he is serious. He's serious." And then my mom really helped me to realize that, he ain't that serious. He's got some amazing sense of humor. But I want you to talk about the sense of humor of God and the specifics in your life when we come back from commercial break.
The way I see it is you've got two choices. You can either keep pretending like nothing bad's ever gonna happen to you, and then when it does, you're saying, uh-oh, or you can get ahead of what's coming so that when it does, not if, you're ready for it. And you're sitting pretty, sipping on Mai Tais next to the pool, working on that Caribbean suntan, because you got it covered. So folks, it's time for you to learn the truth about money. It's time for you to take back control of your money so that you are ready for what's about to happen. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for absolute success. No matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnoggle.com and sign up for the Wealth Webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
Uh-oh, it looks like we piqued your interest in the Hideout. First of all, let me tell you what the Hideout is not. The Hideout is not for hustlers, for grinders, or for people who are looking for a shortcut to what the world calls success. The Hideout is about growing as men, creating lifelong friendships, and having the time of our lives. Are you ready to tap in to the endless source that will take you from success to significance? The Hideout is 2.5 days of hiking, biking, and doing the little things that it takes to create lifelong friendships. I find that joy is nothing more than falling in love with your current circumstances and allowing magic to happen. And that's when we see growth in every area of your life. Have you accomplished your goals professionally and financially, and you still thirst for something more? Has success in these areas come at the expense of far more valuable things, like your family, your children, and your relationships? Alignment in business, strategic partnerships, and joint ventures all come from true relationships. The Hideout is designed to get to know people before you'll ever meet them. This is not your typical mastermind. The Hideout is focused on the one thing that will fuel everything: joy. And when joy is overflowing in your life, you'll find growth in your marriage, your relationships, and oh yeah, your business.
I'm back with Dana Martin, author, editor, contributor to Chicken Soup for the Soul, and we are talking about the sense of humor that God has. Dana, hit me with this.
Yeah, well, we started talking in the last segment about how I had gone to God about Rob and how Rob needed fixing, and that he needed to be my Christian leader because I had been it for so long, And so you would think that our marriage was fixed. Rob started going to a journey group through the influencers, and he made some incredible changes. He did. It was like the light bulb came on for him. He did become a man of God, and our marriage didn't change. And it went another few years, several years, and we still fought. We still, here I was believing and walking with God. He was believing and walking with God, and we still fought. We still said ugly things to each other. And here I had thought this whole time that he just needed fixing. One day on my walk, another day, I was talking to God and I was saying, I don't know why he's like the way he is, God. I don't know why. Do you really want me in a marriage like this? Like, he doesn't say the right things, and he doesn't, he's not interested in me, or, I was just having a little pity party for myself. And I was really talking to God. And for your listeners, it was an inside voice. I wasn't talking out loud.
So, was there any outward at all? Was there any screaming, like yelling, getting, do you argue with him? Do you get mad at him? Do you get mad at God? Because the first time I heard my dad, like my pop, say to me, I yelled at God today. And I was like, whoa, you're about to get struck by lightning. He's like, no, he wants you to yell at him because he wants you to be real. Like, have you got to a point where you're like, look, sweet baby Jesus with wings, you need to do this now? Have you got to that point?
No, I didn't. But I agree with that sentiment that God wants the real you. He doesn't want you holding anything back. If you're angry at him, he wants to know, and he promises that he'll walk you through it. Like, come to me. He says that, come to me. So if you're mad at him, let him know and let him heal your heart. But in this particular case, no, it was all inside me. And I was just saying those things to him. And this is why he's funny the way he is, because all this time I thought it was Rob that needed fixing. And on my walk that day,
I hear it coming. Go, 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 go.
God says to me three words that changed my life. Now, I have not been a Bible reader. I don't, I am now because I'm doing the journey. And I at the time I didn't read the Bible and I didn't know scripture. And so all I heard him say to me is, I am enough. I am enough. And then he went those three words. He just kind of downloaded into me all the things that he is. Dana, you're my precious daughter. I think you're beautiful. I think you're smart. I think you're creative. All these things. I want to talk to you. Come to me. And all of these things that he downloaded right in that moment into my spirit is that I am, and then fill in the blank. Everything after the I am, fill in the blank. And I thought, oh, immediately it let Rob off the hook. And when I say immediately, I was able to go home from my walk that day and I looked at Rob differently. Like, wow, it's not his job to make me feel beautiful. It is not his job to make me feel smart or creative or successful or with a purpose. It is not him. I need to let him off the hook. From that day forward, I was able to serve him right where he was. And I started serving him with a loving, open heart, like I wanted to. I wanted to serve him like I was serving God himself, to make Rob feel good. And all of a sudden, and when I mean all of a sudden, I mean immediately, as soon as my heart opened and I started serving Rob on that level, and it was 10 years after that initial prayer, all of a sudden, Rob started treating me like a queen, like his very valued treasure from God, and has even told me that in this past year, that I am his gift. I am his gift. So yeah, we've been married 34 years, but it's only been the last 3 that has been this amazing. Like, we stuck it out. I trusted God 11 years ago when I wanted to leave him. I asked God for his best instead of what I wanted. And then it still took me another 10 years or roughly to fix me and realize that it wasn't just Rob that needed fixing. I had a huge hang up myself that I was making Rob entirely responsible for my self-worth, and that was unfair.
So we do have a lot of lady listeners, and I want to stay in this place for a second because I think a lot of times when a woman hears, especially in today's society, and the precursor to this is, from my experience in the professional beauty industry for 30 years, all I dealt with was women. So I get a chance to talk on this a little bit where some people would be like, you're judging women. I've spent time with you for a long time. I've been with you in the most vulnerable state. There's only two people in the world that see you with wet hair, your husband and me, right? That's the only two. That's the only two in the world, right, that you're comfortable with. Now, my time in the professional beauty industry, though, a lot of times you would hear, a woman say, someone said, serve my man. I'm my own woman. I need to, do this and do that. But what I heard was something different, but I don't want to lose this moment with you, Dana, because this is a place where you said it. I didn't say it, but you said, serve your man, like at the highest level. And this can cause a controversy with a lot of women. So can you explain, and can we stay in that subject for a little bit to help people to understand?
Yes, I've been that woman. I was that woman for 30 years. Very self-sufficient, right? Rob worked out of town. I raised 3 kids basically on my own. He'll even say that I did. I was very proud that I didn't need him. In fact, I had told everybody, these are my kids. I mean, yeah, he helped me with them, but God gave me these kids. I spent years with my pyramid upside down. So if I were to tell you who the most important, if you could imagine life like a pyramid, the top of my pyramid was my kids, 100%, my kids. And then after that was probably God, kids, family, like my mom and stuff, kids, family, God, anything that I had, because I went through college as an old, when I met you, I was in college. And so I went through college with 3 kids and my husband who worked out of town. So I was juggling kids, college, working in their classrooms. I was very proud that I could do it all on my own. I was writing on the side. I was paying even though Rob made money, I felt proud that I could pay for my college units on articles I wrote for Woman's World magazine, which is a national magazine. And so I was very prideful. I was like, yeah, I don't need a man. I mean, yeah, he brings the income, but I'm raising these kids. I'm cleaning the house. I'm coaching the soccer teams. I'm going to college. I'm working in the classrooms. I'm doing all of this. And Rob maybe was at the end of my pyramid. And that's one reason why it wasn't working. So now I can safely say my pyramid has flipped. My pyramid is God first. Absolutely, unequivocally, without apology. God is first, and God is first in our marriage and with our family after God. And I've had to go back and tell my adult children this. I am sorry for how I treated your dad as sort of unnecessary during your childhood. He's now number 2. He's right after God. And my kids and family are next. Then my worker ministry is after that. And with that pyramid in place, everything works. Now, some women listening to this might say, my husband doesn't deserve. Listen, I guide 34 women through a Bible study, it's kind of a Bible study called The Journey. I hear it all the time, but my husband doesn't deserve it. I know, but we didn't deserve anything that we've been given from God either. And so sometimes it just takes, like Rob, for example, when I came home that day and started serving him, nothing had changed with him. He himself didn't change. He didn't even know what had happened. It was a change inside of me. All of a sudden, I looked at him differently. I wanted to serve him. Now, it doesn't, I'm going to repeat that again. The day that I started serving him wasn't like he deserved it. I didn't do it because Rob deserved it. I did it because it made God happy. And I felt God asking me, serve your husband. And so I did. And in that, all the bad stuff on Rob started falling off. Like all the hangups that he had, all of a sudden he started looking at me differently. I'm just telling you, it was one way. He looked at me one way before I started. And when I say serving, I mean, it's joyful for me. Rob and I are at the point now where we try to outdo for each other first. He'll make me my coffee in the morning and have it waiting for me before I even get out of bed. And so I'm like, I'm going to fold his laundry for him before he can get to the dryer. I'm going to out-serve you. I'm going to out-serve. And so now we're at this beautiful place where it's not like, what have you done for me lately? It's what have I done for you lately? That's where we are right now. And that has made all the difference. What have I done for you lately? Let me do more for you than you do for me. It's a competition now, I think. Silent. We've never discussed this.
Now he knows. Now he's going to know. He's going to know from there. And the thing that I learned over the time of being able to spend time with women 45 minutes at a time, sometimes 15 minutes at a time or whatever it was. But what I learned was that if a woman would compliment her man based off what she wants him to do as opposed to what he's doing, it can change the game. Because one of these things that I learned from my mom early was, and I want you to talk on this, and it seemed, and I hear this with you when you're talking about Rob, is even when my mom and dad had rocky times, she told us as kids she would never speak negatively about my dad. And she was very conscious if they were at a party not to do, we all get into this as couples, and I've fallen victim to this at times where a husband will be like, oh, my wife is always late, or she's always doing this. And then like, if you're with 6 couples, then all the husbands chime in like, oh no, my wife does this, my wife does that. And I realize how damaging that can be in a relationship. And can you talk to that part? Because I think a lot of times we do it in jest, and we do it to kind of like, oh, I want to connect with someone, I want to mirror their stuff, and we start disparaging our spouse inside of a group. But I found when you start lifting them up and saying, no, my man is like X, even if he isn't, he'll start acting that way. That's the little secret for all you women out there. But Dana, talk on that part of it, because it seems like something that, you speak so highly of your man, and I want to commend you on it. But how can a woman start to do that?
She can start right now. Honestly, you can reverse a lot of damage just by starting it right now. Because like I told you earlier, I had to apologize to my children because Rob was sort of an absentee dad, and he was angry, and there was a lot of things that probably were, he had a very stressful job, and he worked out of town, and he had the whole stress of providing for the whole family on a single income, and so I know that was stressful for him. And I never talked necessarily bad in front of the kids, but I sort of did the opposite. I let him make his own bed and lie in it. Like, I didn't make excuses for him if he wasn't. And so, there was a sort of implicit dig, I guess, because I didn't defend him in front of our children. And I have since gone back and especially told my daughters, don't ever do that. Don't do what I did. Always speak highly of your husband to your children, and cover him. And just like you would want to be covered if you were making a mistake, and or if you were constantly late, or all of us women, if we have so many things about us that might be negative. And how would you feel if your husband put you on blast at every cocktail party you went to, or he talked bad about you at work? Instead, it's amazing how you can actually change the culture around you, whether you're at work, whether you are in your own home, whether you're with a group of friends, maybe it's just at a dinner with 2 or 3 couples. If somebody starts saying negative, you tell them, you cover your husband, you uplift him, and you honor him. That's the word I want to use. Honor your husband. It'll come back to you tenfold. I remember one time Rob and I were at a dinner, an influencers dinner, which is an organization that is designed to bring people closer to Jesus. Anyway, there was this Valentine's dinner we were at, and Rob and I our marriage was not good at the time. But the first table question, we had 8 people at the table. The first table question was, say something positive about your spouse that nobody at the table probably knows. And I thought, I knew what condition our marriage was in, and he knew what condition our marriage was in. And so I sort of said a silent prayer, God, help me find something about, like today I would be able to just not stop talking. But that day, it wasn't necessarily true. And so I said, God, help me. And when it came around to me, it just flowed out of me, because at that time I had just seen him when my dad got ill before he passed away. Rob played an integral role, and he also had done with his father at that time, who had just passed away. And one thing that I could say about him, even back then, and I said it in front of Rob, which was huge, because as a writer, I have access to a lot of different words and I can express myself hopefully pretty well. And so I said at the table, my husband is amazing with elderly, sick people. He treats them like anybody would want to be treated, but he has patience and love, and like nothing grosses him out. And it doesn't matter what he has to do and it was my dad. He cared for my dad in the hospital. He cleaned my dad up. He, all of these things that I was able to say, and what an amazing man he was. And here I had kind of fallen out of love with him at the time. And yet I was still able to identify that in him in front of a table full of people who the wives were all sitting there going, wow, they probably thought our marriage was great. But instead, it was just me honoring him. I was not going to embarrass him at that table and be like, I can't think of anything. So I really dug deep, and I found something that was critical that I had seen in our marriage. Now, again, it would be different today. But just for your listeners, for your viewers, I would say, find something. There's something. Look, I wasn't in a happy marriage, but I found something that he did that was so beautiful. It's such a beautiful part of his personality. He has so much patience and so much love for people who are sick and elderly and going through something. And there's something in your spouse, in your loved one, that you can find that you can use to honor them, even if your marriage isn't happy right now. But that's the seed that starts it. That's the seed you plant that will make them think, wow, I didn't know she saw that in me. I didn't know she recognized that in me. And it just fosters more love and more honor in the marriage. And it's a small way to start.
What about the person that's arguing with you right now, but they're arguing in their own heart? They're listening to you and they're like, okay, but I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I've fallen out of love. That is a sign for me to move on. And what the world tells me, and what Instagram tells me, and what TikTok tells me, and what Facebook tells me, and what the world tells me all the way around is, if I'm not happy, I just need to go someplace else.
Yeah, well, I would tell you that that's the enemy, because the enemy, I know people get uncomfortable talking about the enemy, but he's real and he has skin in the game. And you're the skin he has in the game. And it's your breaking up of your marriage is just a notch in his belt. He would love that. And so he's going to make sure you start seeing stuff in the world that shows you. In fact, girlfriends, let me just be honest with you. He's going to start putting men across your path that tell you you're beautiful. That might be at work. That might be at the coffee shop. And he is going to speak into you like your husband never has. And he is going to tell you, oh, you deserve so much more. You deserve more than this. That is the enemy telling you that, because he has a stake in whether or not you stay married. And that is what you're fighting. We aren't fighting our spouses. Okay, I'm going to be frank with you. You and I aren't fighting against our spouses. We're fighting a spiritual battle for our marriages, because there's a spiritual battle going on right now. Whether you believe in it or not, it's true. There's a spiritual battle going on that he doesn't want us to stay in happy marriages. He doesn't want happiness. He doesn't want fulfillment. He's going to make sure your Instagram feed shows you that everybody else is happier than you. Those are lies. Those are lies. And the enemy's greatest tactic is to use your mind, is to use your thoughts that things could be better if only you changed. Well, guess what? If only you change, that next dude you go to is going to still have the same problems. But here's the difference. Now the original guy who you had problems with, who you have children with, he's over here. You're over here. You're both in relationships that aren't your original partner. And now you share children and grandchildren. And now there's so many more pieces of the puzzle on where to go, that you almost, it's almost just, well, you have to pray. You have to pray to God to help you make your decision to stay.
So it was incredible because before we started too, you were talking about a couple of other things that have happened in the family, like with your daughter. You were talking about the different struggles that she had gone through, things like that. The reason why I bring this up, and even with your son, like with your son going through getting drafted and going through his journey and doing all the things.
Yeah.
There was trials, and I hear these trials, and it makes you human to me. A lot of times people see a Dana with those perfect teeth and, writing nationally and writing for Chicken Soup for the Soul and doing all and editing and doing all these things. And then you and Rob, and you guys got these smiles on your face, some cowboy hats from Bakersfield. And you're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, they got just this happy family. Talk to us about that second generation and some of whether it be impacts or some of the things that you're seeing, because, that's the generation that you raised, right? And how they're dealing with the adversities that they have in their life based off of what they learned and gained a foundation from you and Rob.
Well, as you mentioned, our son, Jarrett, played professional baseball for 10 years, and he had an injury, and he had to come back from an injury. And so he had his own struggles, but at the time, and he wasn't walking with God at the time. He believed in God, sort of like how I had raised him. He believed in God, but he wasn't walking with God. And so one day he called me and he said, "Mom, I just don't know what to do. I was just let go." No. I take that back. He said, "I just don't know what to do. I feel like they're going to demote me again. I don't know what to do." And I said, "Jarrett, have you prayed about it?" And he goes, "Well, I mean, I pray." I go, No. Have you taken your career and laid it at the feet of God and said, "Your will be done"? And that was his childhood dream. That was his childhood dream, since he was able to sit up and then eventually stand and play t-ball. He never knew any other way. Even in high school, when you have to write the essays about what you're going to do for a career, Jarrett was one of the only ones that are ever allowed to do actual professional baseball, because the teacher was like, "No rock star, no musician, no movie star, no professional athlete. Like, be realistic. What are you going to do?" Well, the teacher took Jarrett aside and said, "You go ahead and do yours, because we know what you're going to do for a living." So Jarrett didn't always knew what he wanted to do for a living. Well, anyway, I go, "Remember what I had to do." So I told Jarrett during this conversation, "Remember what I did with my company." You had mentioned earlier, you alluded to, well, maybe it was off air, that I used to own haunted attractions. So haunted houses, the kind where people pay money and they pay to get scared. Well, I co-owned one here in Bakersfield, and it was going south fast. And it was due to some really difficult relationships that I had a hand in messing things up. And but I wanted to stay with it because it was my heart's desire, because I thought at the time, my gosh, I'm good at this. I feel good because I co-own this company. I have a business partner who's really good, but he was having marital problems. And I was a contributor to that, because I let him, we were best friends. And that was, so you want to talk about the dirt where I'm not perfect. Well, I'm telling you right now, this was still during that section of time when Rob was doing his job, but Dana had not changed yet. And so I could see that things were going south, and I didn't want to get rid of my company. I didn't want to leave my company. I was desperately in love with this company and what we did. And then we had an explosive event happen, and lots of bad stuff went on backstage, and it was awful. And it really made me think, something is wrong. And for the first time in my life, I said to God, and I said it like this: "Okay, God, if you don't want me doing this anymore, you can have it. please don't take it, but you can have it. You can have it.
Famous last words.
Yes. And so this was on probably a Sunday that I said this to him, maybe Monday, but anyway, Wednesday came and my business partner asked to talk to me at the facility. So I went down there, and I'll never forget, we set 2 chairs up facing each other, and he said, "You have to leave. You can't be a part of the company anymore." And he didn't know what my prayer was. He didn't know what I had prayed. And I looked at him and I put my head back like this. I swear to you, this happened. I would not just say this. I put my head back like this. And the dialogue in my head was, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, because I knew it was an answer to a prayer. And right then, for those of you who don't know, I live in California. Right then, we had an earthquake. There was an earthquake yes, it was an earthquake. And I looked at my partner, I looked at my then partner, and he looked at me and he goes, "Are you feeling that?" I go, "Are we having an earthquake?" And he said, "Yes." And I'm like, "Oh, perfect." So anyway, I didn't cry because I thought, oh, that was an answer. Oh my gosh. It was almost like, oh, okay. Now, was the next year or 2 easy? No, it wasn't. But at least I knew that I had asked him and he took it. Now, that's not comfortable. When you lay something at the altar, right? You give it to God and you say, "Your will be done, but not mine." And it's like, that's painful, because when he does take it, it was, I imagined him up there going, "Finally, thank you, Dana." Because remember what I keep saying, he values our will above his. So as long as I had the free will to stay in that business, as long as I was going to keep grinding, he was going to leave me there. But the minute I gave it to him, he said, "Oh, thank you." And he took it. So I reiterated that to Jarrett on the phone call that day. And I said, "Remember what I had to do with my business?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Honey, you need to do that." I go, "I know you love baseball, but you need to place it on the altar. And, the altar, you need to give it to God and say, if it's not your best, I give you permission to take it away." The next day, Jason and I were driving out of town to go shopping, and Jarrett called and he goes, "Mama, I was just released." I go, "Jarrett, did you say that prayer?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." I go, "Okay, honey. All right. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. But it's God's will. I'm sorry." Well,
But Dana, did he say to you, "I'm not praying anymore, ever"? Because, I'm joking with you. That's why I'm saying, like, I think that God has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's in that place where, and I want you to find us a place in your life where specifically where he has that sense of humor. As far as when I joke about that, I'm joking, but I mean, I would probably say that to my mom. I would be like, "Mom, like, you didn't give me what I want. You didn't give me what I want. This prayer stuff doesn't work." Right.
Mm-hmm.
Although it does work. When is a time when God showed you that his sense of humor, and like in the circumstance, you had to stop and laugh?
Oh my gosh. It just seems like so many times, although I didn't laugh when he said, "I am enough" on that walk that day, I had to laugh later, because I thought all this time I was thinking Rob was the problem and it was really me. So I thought that was funny. But there's been times when I've said, "God, I'm going to lead these women in this, say, for example, this group that I'm doing, this study that we do. God, don't give me any more than 10. And in fact, definitely don't give me this one girl, because I don't get along with her and I don't want her in my group." And so I was saying that prayer as I was driving to my first night, not knowing who was going to be in my group. And I'm like, "Please, God, just make sure she's not in it." I mean, there's 60 women and there's 10 guides, and we're all going to get 6 women. Please just make sure she's not in my group. Out of 60 women, that girl was in my group when I got there. And I just thought, really? Okay. For me, that made me laugh, because he does that to me. It's like, I've gotten to a point now where I don't pray that prayer, because as soon as I do, he's going to do that. If I pray, "Please make sure that person isn't in this room," that person will be in the room, and I can just hear God's laughter. Like, "What were you thinking, girlfriend?" You're gonna tell me not to put that girl? Well, I'm gonna put her in there because she's sandpaper to you, and she is going to sand off some of the rough edges in you.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
So it seems like there's a common theme too, as far as like, you're willing to take the hard road, right? So the easy road would have been not getting into the prayer closet, what my mom would call the prayer closet. It would have been like, you know what? I'm not happy. I'm out.
Yeah.
You went in for a sign, then he gave you a sign. Then you were like, give me a better sign, Lord. One more sign.
Exactly. Give me
One more sign. And then you
a
and then you were walking on the trail and you were like, you gave me the 2 signs, but if you give me one more, then I'll listen.
Yeah.
So you seem to keep taking the hard road. And we have an experience together that your husband learned about a long road. Because I remember, this is probably one of my favorite things.
Yes, I know what you're going to say right now too.
Do you want to finish the story? You want to tell me? No, tell it.
it.
Okay, I'll start it. You live in Bakersfield. When we met, I lived in Vegas. It's about, I would say, conservatively about 5 hours, right? Depending on how you drive.
I got there in 4, but yeah.
Okay, that's how you drive. That's not honoring the Lord, Dana. She was not honoring the Lord at this time, but she was getting there quick. You would drop your kids off at school, drive to Las Vegas, get your hair done, have your kids go to practice or a sitter after school, and drive back from Vegas after getting your hair done to pick up your kids. And your husband had a challenge with this one time. Can you, and again, like it could have been the easy road. Hey, I'm going to be in Bakersfield. I'm getting my hair done in Bakersfield. There's a bunch of hairdressers, but you drove. And then you and I had this experience. You called me and you told me this experience. Can you tell them that story?
Yes. So exactly what you said happened. And I did that a lot, and I could justify it money wise, because I would say, oh my gosh, well, Kelly's cut, color, and style lasts for like 4 months. So I only have to get it done, 3 times a year. I only have to do it 3 times a year. And if I did it in Bakersfield, I would have to do it every 6-8 weeks. And so he bought into that. And, for all of you out there who have had Kelly do your hair, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you get in to see Kelly and you are like, everybody from that point on, where do you get your hair done? Where do you get your hair done? Well, you can't get that color here in Bakersfield. You can't get that style in Bakersfield. So I was loving that everybody loved my hair, and I loved the experience too. It's just an experience when you went to that salon. And it was pampering myself, which with 3 kids in college, the whole bit, I didn't get to pamper myself much. So it was a nice treat. Well, anyway, he started with it's costing a lot in fuel. It's kind of silly that you're traveling that far. It's dangerous, all the things. But mainly it was, that's just too far. And it's crazy. How do you tell people you get your hair done in Vegas? So, and truth be told, we were thinking, well, at least one of those times of the year, it would be a couple's trip, and I would just get it done while we were there as a couple, because it's Vegas. And it is drivable. Well, that never happened because he was busy with work. So then it became just me going there to get my hair done. And then that's when it started getting a little, there was some lunacy there. So I said, okay. So we thought was a Paul Mitchell trained girl salon here in Bakersfield. And, they sold Paul Mitchell products, and she said she had been through the classes, and my hair was, okay. So you guys remember the perm story. I had this big 80s perm. Well, Kelly didn't straighten it per se, but he just started giving me a new hairstyle. And in fact, I wore it this way today to bring back old times. I normally curl it, but I'm like, no, I got to bring this back today just so he remembers my face. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, I went to this gal, and the second she walked up to me, you guys, I am telling you the honest to God's truth right now, before she even said hello or what are we doing to you today, I felt a tug on the back of my hair. I'm not exaggerating this. I felt a tug on the back of my hair, and I heard snips. And then she walked away. I looked on the floor. She had cut at least this much of my hair off. I went from having hair as long as I have now to what I would call short hair. It was hitting the shoulder here. And to a woman, especially a young woman, like, your hair is everything. My hair length. I mean, I wanted long hair. I had short hair all my life, and everybody thought I was a boy when I was a little girl. Everybody thought I was a boy because my mom had me have this Dorothy Hamill haircut. My mom thought, everybody thought I was a boy. So I'm going to be like the oldest lady on the planet. I'm going to have long hair as long as I can. So anyway, she cuts my hair off. And I said, what did you do when she finally came back? She goes, well, it was damaged. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I said, I'm growing out a perm. It wasn't damaged. That was perm. That wavy stuff was perm growing out. I said, that's all that was. Well, anyway, it's too late now. My hair's on the floor. Well, let me tell you what, I cried for a week. I cried. I thrashed. I was angry. I blamed entirely Rob for it. His entire fault. And he couldn't make me happy. I would cry every day. Every time I'd look in the mirror, I'd start crying. I was like this functional mom now. I had this mom cut. I had this like functional haircut. It was like no longer a style. I had a haircut. And I thought, what in all of heaven has just happened to me? I started taking vitamins. I made Rob rub my hair every night just so it would be, we could get the blood flowing. And so anyway, from that point forward, he said, I will never, never tell you can't go see Kelly again.
Well, and he also got you a hotel. So he was like, no, stay. And he's like, you're not only going. I remember you telling me this because you used to drive home. Like, you used to drive out 4 hours, get your hair done, and drive back. And everyone in the salon, especially your guy who would shampoo you, Michael.
Yes.
You remember that. She's smiling even bigger now that she knows. Michael Chavella is in the group, and big shout out. He's in our mastermind group. But I remember you saying like, I said, I want to respect your time. And you were like, oh, it's no big deal. I don't have a time frame today. And I was like, why? And you were like, because Rob got me a hotel. He had to deal with me for 8 weeks with me being mad at my hair. So he said this. And the reason why I say this is because it's the consistent message, right? Like, you can take the short road, right? You could take the short road that you think is very, very convenient to you in your marriage, with your kids, with your relationship with God. Or you can take the road, and he's not saying, like, Dana, what you've said this whole time is it's not going to be easy. It's going to be simple because you're going to follow him. But it's not going to be smooth. Yeah. But ultimately, it's going to be amazing. You just gave us a recipe, honestly. Like, it's crazy to think of it. You just gave us a 31-year recipe to be able to get to a point where you can really enjoy and have a legacy. That's, yes. I mean.
Yes, it's true.
Now, some people are like, can you give me the Instagram version and do it in a minute and a half, God? Like, you know what I mean?
I know. Well, if I had known, right? That's why I went back and corrected my actions to my children, because they're all still in young marriages right now, right? I have a son and 2 daughters, and they're 33 years old, 31 and 29. And they all 3 have spouses, and they have children. And I needed to go back and correct it now so that they know now what I know now. So it's not going to take them 30 years to realize you honor your spouse first. Above everybody but God, you honor your spouse first. I know that seems tough if you don't feel like your spouse is honorable, right? But perhaps they are waiting for, they don't even realize they're waiting. They didn't have maybe honor in their childhood. Maybe they weren't honored by their parents. They have no honor at work, whatever it is. But you as their spouse, whether it's a man listening to this or a woman, you as their spouse have been given such a beautiful role in their life. You have more, your words have more sway over your spouse than anybody. I had a lady tell me one time who had just lost her spouse. She just said this to me a couple of years ago. I went over to see how she was doing, and she was in a very long, long, long happy marriage. And she said, Dana, you are the only person that gets to touch Rob like this. She said, you are the only one that gets to rub your hand in his hair. Honor that. No other woman gets to do that. And if you're not doing it, no one is. And we have been given that special task. God gave us this spouse. Now, I have one more thing to say about that. So I'm a writer, I'm an editor, and I edit people's books. Well, one day I had a pastor. Well, it's not one day. I've edited one whole book for him, and he has another book. And so I went to see him one day. Remember, he's this pastor. He's so cool, non-denominational. He's amazing. His name is Mike, so I'm going to send this to him now so he gets to hear this. I sat down with him, and he's doing this book on marriage at the time. He was going to do this book on marriage because he counsels people going through marital trouble, and he has all of these stories and all of this great advice. So we're talking about it, and I said, I have a question for you. He gets ready, and he goes, okay, shoot. I said, and this was in that area before I had decided that I was going to be better. He said, I said, Mike, I go, what? I said, I chose Rob when I was 19. I used my free will to choose Rob. I used my free will to choose Rob. And a lot of you may have this in common too. I used my free will to pick Rob. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. Somebody just came to my door. So if I used my free will for Rob, who is to say that God didn't have somebody better? What if God had somebody better, but at 19 years old, I picked Rob? I was 19. I could have chosen an office chair. I could have married an office chair. I chose Rob because I was ready to get out of my mom and dad's house. I mean, who's to say that that was the right one? I was basically asking him permission to get a divorce at the time. And Mike looks at me and he nods his head and he goes, yep. You know what, Dana? God may have had somebody better for you. That's true. He may have had somebody that would have been the ideal husband for you, but you chose Rob. And you know what God did when you chose Rob? I said, what? And he looked at Rob and he goes, oh, I love that one too. Okay, that one will work. That's a good one too.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was that like the fourth sign then? Or are we looking for the fifth one?
You're right.
On our next episode, Dana's going to be like,
you're right.
The ninth sign was Kelly. I said, look, 1 through 8 were good, God, but I'm in this place right now.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So that is, for me, you're probably right. And because that was the in-between, right? That was after the bathtub incident, but it was before the I am enough conversation that we had.
Well, but I think it's great because it's so real, because I think we hear these stories about a person being like, oh, I found, like my dad. I remember my dad coming home in 1985 and he was like, I found Jesus. And I was like, I didn't know he was lost. You know what I'm saying? But from that time when he found him in his life, mm-hmm. It was a journey. Like, it didn't wipe away all the things that were going on in my dad's life at the time. Right. But right. I love that reality that you speak about, Dana, because it makes it real. I mean, a 31-year journey, like you think about a 31-year journey, most of the time people give up after one text message that's been sitting for 5 minutes and you think the person's ghosting you. Does that make sense? That's the society we live in today. If it goes 2 days on a text message, you're like, what's wrong? And especially you crazy ladies out there. I mean, it's like 2 minutes and you're like, question mark, arrow up. Did you see my text? Are you just ghosting me? Are you talking to somebody else? Blah, 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 blah. But it's amazing because of that patience part of it. So how do we know, Dana, if it's God talking to us?
Well, that's easy for me because when you hear the voice answer you, it's almost entirely always something you would never say to yourself. Like, why would I ever tell myself, you know what you need to go tell him, or you one more time and you're off the hook? Like all of these things, right? Like, it's God's voice because it's not ever something that you would say to yourself. I would. So
what about the person that's like, I really feel like I should go out and get this bag, even though I don't have the money. I'm really feeling like I deserve it. Is that God?
No, that's just your want a new purse, which is, you have to pray over your finances too. When we're out spending like a fool, we can't expect God to cover us, right? Well, that brings up the trial that we had. My husband and I had a large trial this year. So all of this, I think, stacked up in my life and my history to get us ready for the biggest trial of our lives. And Rob and I just spent the last year of our lives being sifted, which means like an enormously huge trial that you didn't bring upon yourself. Like stuff started happening to you. And it coincidentally, which you and I talked about, there's no such thing as coincidence. It happened right after I gave God the blank check for my life. And the enemy was like, oh, no, way too much getting ready to happen there. So I'm going to start hitting them, pummeling them with issue after issue after issue. And we wondered, like, oh my goodness, when it started happening, we were getting clobbered. We got clobbered for a year, and yet God kept providing. But earlier in the year, every year in church in January, the pastor sort of asks us, pick a word for this year, but ask God what your word is going to be for this year. And last year, I forget the word now, but it was basically to watch over your finances. It was don't be spending, right? And so, and it happened right before Rob lost his company. And so we went a year without any income, 1 year with zero income, Kelly, like zero, not just no income, but tons and tons of attorney bills on top. And then we almost lost my mom's house. Again, I had told you my mom had passed away. Well, we had so much other stuff going on that I didn't even realize her house had been put in foreclosure. I mean, we still had furniture. I just couldn't deal with her death and, procrastinated until I almost lost it. We took money out of savings to save it. Long story short is that we went a year with no income, and God provided income that we didn't have prior to that year. We had no income stream. When Rob got let go and his company disappeared last January, we had no income stream. And yet God started providing an income stream immediately that we had never had before, a brand new income stream. And we have been paying our bills and our attorney's bills and everything ever since on this income stream until our situation just ended last Monday. And so it has been all God. And so again, it's like unbelievable. So you talk about the purse analogy, right? Well, I had wanted to buy purses this year. I had wanted to buy all these new things, right? And yet I kept not buying it because it's like, wow, God is providing for all of our needs right now. We now have medical insurance. He has provided income. We're paying our bills. We're paying things off. I can't just go and spend crazy amounts of money on things I think I want or deserve when he is making sure that all of this other necessity stuff is covered with no jobs. Neither one of us had a job. And so it's like, wow. So it's like you make a decision. My flesh wants this. Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't want pretty things anymore, but you know what I'm loving more is that we don't work and God is providing. I like that more.
So what is off limits in prayer? Because we in our prayer group, I remember we have a men's group. And if you're a man and you're listening and you're not in a prayer group, get in a prayer group or in a men's group. It is unbelievable the transformations that can happen. Yeah. But I remember when we first started off, I said, guys, what I want to do, first of all, I want to be real, right? I want to be real with God. But also, number two, God wants us to be very specific. And it's okay to pray about like anything. And one of the guys was like, that sounds kind of petty. And I was like, well, sometimes I'm petty. And God knows me. He made me and he gave me that pettiness. So what is off limits when it comes to prayer?
Well, nothing is off limits, but he is under no obligation to answer selfish prayers, right?
I don't like your caveats, Dana. I don't like that. I feel like you're judging me right now. You keep passing that judgment on this selfishness.
Not at all.
I mean, but is it okay for me? Because I remember like, a person being like, oh, well, I only can pray, especially when we first started off our men's group. I was like, what do you want to pray for? And they're like, my family, for health. And I was like, but what do you like want? And I started off and I was like, I want rims for my car. Like I got a 63 Impala. I want new rims for the car. And they were like, is it okay to pray? I was like, yes, you could pray for some rims on it. Doesn't mean he's going to give them to me. He hadn't given them to me yet. Maybe he's just being selfish. Maybe maybe my Jesus is being a little selfish with them rims is what it is. Or maybe I'm just being too petty. That's what.
Well, you know what? You can ask for absolutely anything, right? What he says is ask anything in my name, basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, and it shall be yours. But his caveat is that if it's for the kingdom, I'll give it to you, right? And so if you can use those, we'll use your rims thing as an example, right? If it became imperative that you had those rims, and that if somebody was going to be attracted to you based on those rims, right? Maybe it's the salesman of the rims. Maybe it is a person who comes up to you in a parking lot and looks at those, and then you get to have a conversation with God about, over those rims, but it turns into a God conversation. Yeah, I mean, why not say, God, work through me, and please use the rims to do it.
Have you ever tried to trick God into blessing you?
No, what do you
Never.
mean?
I mean, no, the reason why I'm saying is because you have like a selfish desire, and maybe I'm the only one in the world. But you have a selfish desire and you do this prayer, right? And you're like, look, if you bring me that Louis Vuitton purse, I will tell everyone about the kingdom of God. Have you ever been in that place at all? I've been there. I've been like, look.
I have not, but I saw my mom do that. And I saw her do it, and it didn't work out so well. What
did she pray for? What was it?
She literally said this, and it's because my dad, and I know that you know this, but it's been so many years since we talked about it. He was in a really bad car accident, and he had a head injury. Well, during that time, they were both heavy smokers. And she said, God, if you save Mike, I will stop smoking. And God saved Mike. And old Gail, she had a hard time with her end of the bargain. So no, I've never done that before, because I have seen that, pardon me, that it's hard, when you're making a deal with God like that. I don't think that God, he saved Mike for other reasons. And it wasn't because she said that. So I think that put an undue guilt on her, probably for the rest of her life. Whenever she did smoke again, that, man, I told God I wouldn't. And God, he's not that kind of God. He wants, he'll save Mike whether he wants to or not, based on what he knows what's best for Mike's life. And not because we made him a promise that he knows already in advance we can't keep.
Well, that got us all off the hook, because all of us at some point in our life were like, God, if you get me out of this thing,
yes,
I'm going to be first at church. I'm going to be given to Mother Teresa. I'm going to be serving the community. We've all done it. I think I want to tell you a quick one about a sense of humor with my mom, because I was at church the other day, and it was the first week, so they did communion, and they brought down the communion. And nowadays it's so funny because like technology, like somebody found a way to be able to put some grape juice in a little wafer inside a little package and sell that. And they're making millions, right? They're probably not even Christian, that does it. But they said, open up the top, and I opened up the top. It's a little wafer. If you've been to church, or even if you haven't, like, I put the wafer on my tongue, and my mom spoke to me so strong, right? So my mom passed away about 4.5 years ago, actually almost 5. But my mom spoke to me so strong. I put the thing on, and I was like, wanting to commune with Jesus and spend time with the Lord. And I was just being peaceful. And my mom, with her personality, was like, I bet you a lot more people would go to church if that communion would taste better. And my mom said, and I started laughing, and everybody's serious. And I was like, I mean, I'm talking to myself, and I was audible with it. I was like, mom. And you can imagine I seem crazy because I look like I do. I'm standing in front of church. I'm, at this time, I'm like, mom. And she's like, but I'm saying, like, a lot of people think that that Jesus tastes like a stale wafer with some nasty grape juice. If you would give him a Twinkie and some Mountain Dew, then everybody would get saved because Jesus tastes good, right? And I was dying, but I couldn't tell anyone because you have to tell the whole story. And there's a lot of people that be like, no, I'm of the cloth and I need to speak like, and I was like, no, I want you to understand that God has a personality. He has a sense of humor. And most of the stuff that you're taking yourself so seriously, like, He's saying, like, Dana, I could take 31 years and give you 5 signs, or you could listen now. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need these walks and talking to me silently, you crazy lady. You can listen to me now. And that's the part that it's incredible, your story, because all this, like, all the way around was to understand that, you know, to be able to connect, like to be able to connect you in the relationship, you and him having that relationship, and then everything else went on. You know what I mean? But I just love God's personality, and I love his sense of humor.
Yeah. You talk about the path, right? The path that I chose, the harder path or the easy path. I have a visual aid that I just showed my women on Tuesday, and it's of 2 paths, and there's on this one path, there's a whole bunch of people with dogs, doesn't matter, all kinds of people. And then there's this other path it's kind of a fork in the road, and there's just one person on this other path. And the other path is the busy path is the one, the most populated path is the one that we're all on, whether you believe or not. In fact, I use the example that this is a path of all believers. Let's just say, for example, that everybody on that path, that very full path, is a believer. That, because I was on that path, right? Even though I was, all those years of me asking for signs and all of this and training my kids to believe in God, I was on that path with everybody else. But it's that path, but that one person that's on the other side, that's where I am now, where it's an intimate, abiding relationship with Jesus. It's where I have easier access. Like, for example, remember the sifting and all of the trial that my husband and I have been going through this year. It has been a rough year for a number of ways, but right in December, we had something happen where it became right in our face. And it was a situation that could have possibly humiliated my husband. And for those of you who are married, or you could even use it if it's somebody humiliates your child, how that can make you react. Like, how do you dare humiliate my husband? He doesn't deserve that, or my child, or whatever. Well, in this case, my husband left the house and came back, and he goes, look what's happening. And he shows me a text message, and I saw his face just like so shocked that something like this could happen to him. And old Dana that had been on the path with all of the people, old Dana would have just railed and screamed and like, I can't believe this could happen. And it could have, I would have just cried. And so what happened was, as I cried a little bit for the maybe potential embarrassment that my husband was getting ready to endure. But very quickly, though, it got replaced. And it was replaced with, oh, well, who cares about that? That's just a thing. It's just a monetary item. That's just a thing of this world. You know what? I'm not going to fight the enemy over that. He can have it. He can have that. We don't need that. Let the enemy have it. He can take it. I don't care. We don't need it. And that only took me about 20 minutes to get to. So I let myself cry and weep for my husband. Like, I'm so sorry you're going through this. It killed me that he was going through it. And then very quickly I looked at him and I go, but you know what? We don't even need that. That's not of God. It's in the world. You know what? The enemy can have that. I'm not going to fight him over it. We're still happy. We have our health. We have our 6 kids. We have our 7 grandkids. We're so happy. God is providing our income. We don't need that thing. You know what? We're good. Now, Dana that had walked with all the people on the path, that would have probably taken me 3 weeks to get to that, right? But when we are active in our faith and we are letting God lead us, lead our thoughts and our moves and our way of thinking, I was able to access that in under 20 minutes, which would have taken me much, much longer in the past to be able to get to. And that's where I am today.
It's amazing to be able to hear the humility from you too, Dana, and to be able to spend the time with you. You know, I started the podcast because of my kids, Maddox, who's 11 years old, who I get to go to Science Day with today, and McKenna, who's 14, and she's doing her callback for Little Shop of Horrors tonight. And she, you know, Maddox marches to the beat of his own drum. You know, he has a haircut that nobody has. He wears things that nobody does, and he does it unapologetically. McKenna got one of the greatest sense of humors. She got it from my mom, I believe, that said that communion, if it was Twinkies and Mountain Dew, would attract more people to the church. But I started the podcast because of those two people in my children, and I wanted to take iconic figures like yourself, and I wanted to show them that anything was possible. And if you had the right work ethic and you had the right attitude. So what advice from Auntie Dana would you give Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names, it would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, for McKenna, girl, just be yourself, love God, love him first, and let him tell you every day that you are the apple of his eye and that you can do anything. You can do anything through him, anything you set your mind to. And Maddox, oh my gosh, you are unique. You're one of a kind. Always put God first, and he will always lead you on the right path. You're going to be given many paths, both of you, Maddox and McKenna. You're going to be shown many paths in your life. There's going to be a wide path that everybody is on, and there's going to be a narrow path. The narrow path looks rocky, and it's got a lot of cliffhangers, and it's got a lot of places that you could trip over rocks. The wide path is the one that everybody is on. Everybody is on the wide path, and that one looks easier to you, but that one leads to the world. The other one leads to God, and he promises you that on that path, there will be so many rewards in your life. You will meet a man and woman of God who God already has chosen for you. As you sit here today, God already knows and has chosen your spouse specifically for you. And I pray for you right now that you wait on that person, and that you find and that you pray and that you wait on God to show you who that person is, because somebody will love you like God loves you. Do not settle for the person who loves you like the world. Settle for the person, wait for the person that God has designed for you, that has the very eye for you that God has, that will see the very best in you, because he and she were chosen for you exactly from God.
Dana, you're unbelievable. It has been so cool to be able to spend the time with me, time here. This has been a selfish episode for me. Because, you know, I want to share you with the world. You know, there's people in our group that, you know, I think there's people in our group, in our mastermind. If you're not in our mastermind, it's on Facebook. It's under Kelly Cardenas Mastermind. It is honestly some of the most amazing people. What I did is I congregated all my buddies, all my friends, and I wanted to introduce all their superpowers to each other. And, but there's so many people even in the group that don't know the depth of who you are. And I get a chance to, I mean, you're Dana to me, but to the world, just such an incredible author, such an incredible contributor, and, you know, employee of the king, as you say.
I'm not the boss of me. Yeah.
So, well, that's not what my daughter says to me all the time when I ask her to do something. She says that she is the boss of her. But I wanted to thank all of our sponsors too. Chris Noggle, the Money School, and the Private Money Club. The reason why they're a sponsor is because for me it's about relationship, and I made a relationship with Chris Noggle, and he's helped with financial literacy, and it's been incredible. The Private Money Club is a place where you can seek out deals, or you can actually fund deals. But he explained it to me that it was like the first dating app for money for loans, and they took the banks out of it. And I just thought it was amazing. But being a sponsor of the podcast is because of my relationship with Chris Nagel and my relationship with Jim DiGiulio with Findlay Volvo Cars of Las Vegas. It's amazing to me because, Dana, when I started the podcast, the first episode that I didn't even have the mic plugged in. Because I didn't have a plug for it. I just put one in front of me to make it look like I had a mic. And if you would have told me that Findlay Volvo Cars of Las Vegas and Chris Nagel would be sponsoring the podcast and running commercials on our podcast, and that we would be in the top 1% of all podcasts globally, I would have told you I'm not surprised, because I expected that. I could tell you that. I could tell you that because of that dude that you were talking about that you serve. Right. Yeah. And so my sweet baby Jesus doesn't always give me what I want. He gives me what I need, but it is such an honor to be able to have the sponsors on the podcast. And just a little shout out to every single person listening and watching. It's because of you guys. We didn't do any paid advertisement, no paid marketing. It all came organic, and all of you that were sharing it with your friend, sharing it with your daughter. And I invite you, any one of you that's listening, share this with a woman who's struggling in their marriage. Share this with a woman who's struggling in their marriage that has children. Share this with a woman who's in her marriage that, maybe isn't struggling, but, maybe there's some stuff on the way. Share this with every husband that is struggling in a marriage. Share this with your kids. Share this with your kids' spouses. Maybe you could get the hint that I'm saying share it with every damn person that on this planet, because Dana's wisdom is so amazing. And I want to thank you, Dana, for being able to share the time with me that you did. I can't wait to have you on again onto the show.
Thank you so much. This has been great. And for your listeners, I knew when I met you at 30 years old that you were a man of God. And that's, I think, partially why we stayed such close friends, because I knew so few men of God back then. And so you were a great example of a young entrepreneur and somebody starting out, and you still put God first. And I really appreciated that. I'm sorry if you can hear that dog barking.
We love the dog barking because it's reality, and I love that. What I want to compliment you on, Dana, is you showed who Dana is, because this is the Dana that I got when I sat down and there was no one else around and we had conversations. You are no different, like when the lights turn on, and that is integrity to me. And most of the time when you hear a woman, a woman with your type of faith, they'll put on a show and then you meet them afterwards. There's been times where I've met pastors' wives and they've been in the church, like, just clapping their hands and smiling and being like, oh, praise the Lord. And then you ask them after the service, you should go to shake their hand, and they don't even give you the time of day. And what I want to tell you is your integrity, being the same in the dark as you are in the light. And for all the people out there listening, this is actually who Dana is. Like, you just experienced an hour and 47 minutes of real Dana Martin, one of the top editors and authors in the world. And you got a peek into that. And I just want to thank you, because there's not many people that are willing to go to those places.
Oh, thank you. We're all flawed. I've made some terrible mistakes in my life. And thankfully, I serve a king who, when I asked for forgiveness, he said, you're forgiven. And if I try to go back to those now, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's old Dana. She's gone. This is new Dana. We're moving forward. You gave your life to me. Let's see all the great things that we can do together. And I'm like, down.
Well, I didn't say it at the beginning, but DanaMartinWriting.com. Check that out. You can check her out on IG. Tell them your IG handle.
My IG handle is Halloween_Granny. It's after my children's book I wrote of the same title, Halloween Granny. And it's my passion. I love Halloween. That doesn't end. I still love Halloween. And so my daughter Jason said, Mom, you need to create an IG account where you can just put all of your love of Halloween in one place. So I did. That's where we are. It's Halloween_Granny on Instagram.
Well, Dana, I honestly can't wait to have you on the show again. And I want to do some lives in the Facebook group too, because I think that, you pouring into people and sharing your superpower is so incredible. If you get the opportunity, you're out there listening, you get the opportunity to be in Dana's group also, it would be something that would honestly change your life. And I just, again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You have been absolutely phenomenal. Click the links. It's going to be in the bio. Check out all the sponsors. You know what you need to do. And to all my ladies out there that are watching on YouTube, we're only 80% men and 20% women on YouTube. Everywhere else, we're 50-50. It's because you're not smashing the subscribe button. So do it. You know that's what Sweet Baby Jesus would like you to do. Dana, you have been amazing. You're officially off the hot seat.
Oh.